had the NBA Finals continue, and it's taking forever. It's been going on for like 2 months, it feels like. But the NBA Finals is still going on, and where we left you was the Pacers being up 2-1. They are now down 3-2. They've lost 2 games in a row with a controversial game three where the Pacers are kind of in control of it. And then Scott Foster decides to extend and start blowing his whistle, except where when SGA does his best Michael Jordan impression, pushes off, and then takes 4 steps. And then there's been a lot of talk in the series about Rick Carlisle this, Rick Carlisle that. Oh my God, isn't Rick Carlisle such an underrated coach? But if you're such a great coach, answer me this. Halliburton was doing absolutely nothing. He was compromised in game four. Looks like he had a supposed calf injury coming into the game and aggravated it early on. But TJ McConnell is putting up buckets, and he's the only one putting up buckets on your team. So why, if you're this great coach, would you bench Halliburton for the guy who brought you all the way back to within two? It was a 2-point game, and then suddenly OKC just extended it to 13 points when McConnell was the one really keeping you in the game anytime you needed a bucket. Like, how can everyone say, oh my God, what a great coach, you get the Pacers to the finals, and then you make such a massive error when Halliburton can't even get a shot off because he's so injured?
Yeah, and we're talking about game 5, right? I just want to make sure we're talking about
Game
last
5.
game, right?
Last
Yeah,
game.
Halliburton looked like a complete mess. I definitely think he's dealing with some sort of injury. Couldn't make a shot to save his life. And then meanwhile, you have TJ McConnell, who I believe had 20 points, 18 points, it looks like. But for me, yeah, I don't know where I put my finger on this. You had a couple of stats about Scott Foster, like extending the series. I guess this is a game where I felt like OKC began to take control. Their defense was stepping up. They had Pascal Siakam had 6 turnovers in this game. Do you think that after game 5 that ultimately this will be wrapped up in 6 at this point? Or do you see this still going 7 potentially?
I think it still should go 7. And I feel like for Oklahoma City, you definitely want them to win on your floor. And then we also haven't had an NBA Finals go 7 games since I believe 2016 when LeBron beat the Warriors. And pretty much every other series has been a sweep. But if Halliburton isn't 100%, I feel like if you start McConnell the whole game, you should have enough where if you're at home, like game 5 was close at some points, and that was with SGA having over 30 points and Jalen Williams dropping a 40 ball. And then also in game 5, that was the best I've ever seen Chet Holmgren play in my life. And I know he didn't score a lot of points, but defensively, Holmgren was having an impact on that game. He was getting tough defensive plays. He was getting really good rebounds. And then you have Jalen Williams turn into an absolute superstar. I mean, he looked like Dwayne Wade in that game where he's just going off, putting up 40 points, and then you have SGA putting up 31. So I feel like you really got Oklahoma City's best punch in the shooting, and their bench hasn't translated on the road. So look for like a big Miles Turner and Obi Toppin game, because I think they should have won game 4. And that was definitely a game where, yeah, we did have an issue with the ref here, but I also felt like the Pacers gave that game away. Their offense was kind of just frantic at the end of it. It wasn't too decisive, but yeah, you should be able to get at least one game where you limit the turnovers here. If not, this finals is starting to remind me a lot, if they lose on Thursday, of that Celtics and Warriors finals where the Celtics went up 2-1, Warriors figured it out, and then the Pacers do exactly what the Celtics did in that finals, which is what? Turn the ball over every play. Doesn't it feel like watching the Celtics in that finals run in 2022 when they're just turnover, drive into traffic, everyone collapses. It's like, it's so predictable too.
And it's frustrating too because throughout the entire playoff run, they were one of the most efficient teams in all of basketball. They weren't turning over the ball. Like Halliburton was having, he had that 35, 15, and 10 game with no turnovers. And then we go into this series. I give credit to OKC and having a great game plan, and they've been great defensively all postseason. Like at the end of the day, like Pacers, where are your adjustments? Like you got to know that this is coming at this point. You've played 5 games at this point. You're 1 game away from being eliminated at this point. Like you would think that there would be proper adjustments made, and unfortunately, they haven't been able to adjust to the game plan with the Thunder. But I like that comparison. I definitely think it's a valid comparison. I'd like to think the Pacers figure it out next game, though, because they seem to be better at home and with adversity on them.
And the Thunder are a lot better at home, too. Like, Jalen Williams does not play like that on the road. But honestly, like, I picked before I knew Steph Curry and Jimmy Butler were going to be a tandem and together in the playoffs. I thought that the Thunder were going to make the finals, and that was my prediction after the season ended last year. And it was because of Jalen Williams, and that's exactly the player I saw the potential for him to turn into this playoffs. And like, hats off to Jalen Williams because everyone's going to be talking about, is Halliburton a superstar? Does this like null like everything great that Halliburton has done in the playoffs this year? Like, first of all, no, it doesn't. And then Jalen Williams should be what everyone is talking about today, where he's the one who just turned the level all the way up to make them a championship team. Not only did you add veteran leadership with Caruso just hustling everywhere, being that grit and glue guy, along with Hartenstein being able to play two bigs, but like just Jalen Williams turning into not just like a legitimate two, but a guy who's like pressing on potentially being a one for another team in this league if he keeps this up for another year or two. Like, if you're gonna have to pay SGA close to 300 million, like someone is gonna give you a monumental offer for Jalen Williams if you ever have to part with him, because you might have to choose between Jalen Williams and Chet.
Yeah, and honestly, if I had to pick today, I would pick Jalen Williams. Honestly, like with Chet, Chet's been great defensively for them. I'm curious, like, I definitely think there's another gear that Chet can go, but I've had moments in this series and really throughout the playoffs where I felt like Chet has looked small for his size. So I definitely think he needs to add some weight. But Jalen Williams, as far as like the scorer that he's capable of being, him paired with SGA and what he's able to bring to the table, I definitely think that Jalen Williams is the guy that they're going to probably pick over Chet, because I feel like Chet is more replaceable than Jalen Williams at this place, especially with how many picks they have and who they can potentially replace Chet with ultimately.
Yeah, and also like as far as like him and Jalen Williams, like I want to say this with Jalen Williams too. Like, you could probably put together a compilation of the playoffs of him going up in the air and falling on his back, and me just holding my breath every time. Like, how many times have you just been watching these games and you're like, when he's up
Jalen
in the
Williams gets hurt.
air, and then you have Doris Burke, look at her, look at him in the air like that falling. But yeah, and then
Yeah.
it's the opposite with Chet, where every time someone touches him, I think he's gonna be like career-ending injury here. And I think he will get better when he puts on some muscle. And I think game 5 was his best game, because that was the first time he actually looked assertive defensively, and it looked like he actually had some fire that lit, and it was like one of the best games I've seen from him. They don't necessarily need him to be a scorer, which is nice. Like, if he gets you 18 points a game but turns into a monster defensively, that's really all you can ask for, because you're going to be going up against Wemby for the next 5-10 years.
Yeah. Plus, you also have SGA and Jalen Williams that can get a bucket. Really, Chet's just going to be the defensive and offensive rebound guy. And then obviously, what he can do on the defensive end is going to be impressive. You need Chet to contain the Wembys of the world, the Jokers of the world, the Giannis's of the world, and so on and so forth. So ultimately, if that's what his role is, then ultimately that's what it's going to be. They still have a short win, like they still have a decent enough window where they don't need to make that decision right away. It's just when all these guys need to get paid, that's when they're going to have to make that big decision. But with Chet, I believe that's at least another 2 years away. And same with Jalen Williams.
Also, too, like if you watch like mainstream media, you would think the Thunder don't have a coach, because like the Pacers got to the finals. All we heard about was how great Rick Carlisle is, and everyone was worshiping Rick Carlisle. Is he the greatest coach since Greg Popovich for getting this team to a finals? Like, they have a bunch of scrubs on the roster. But then, you have Mark Daigneault on this team, who quietly just leads this team to a 68 win record. I believe he won Coach of the Year last year. And then, correct me if I'm wrong. And then he also has a defensive plan where he's stifled the best offense in the league, and he's turned them all into turnover machines, where the Pacers are playing like out of character, and he's been able to take advantage of what they do the best, where he's turning that pace that they play with into turnovers and kind of using that against them. And they really haven't been able to solve for just being like everyone just collapsing on the ball. They protect the paint, but they're one of those teams that as soon as they crash, they're able to rotate and get back very quickly. So like, I feel like he's done a really good job, and just, again, Sam Presti for building this Thunder team again. Like, after you had Paul George, after you had the KD Thunder, like the fact that SGA and Jalen Williams are going to be the duo that gets it done, and SGA is probably going to have a more impressive finals victory than Kevin Durant ever did, because KD jumped ship to the Warriors and was playing with the best player in the league at the time. Like, I feel like Mark Daigneault has not gotten enough credit, and it's kind of embarrassing.
Yeah, especially with everything you mentioned, 68 wins.